It all started on an ordinary Saturday in a quiet neighborhood of a city where, apparently, nothing extraordinary ever happened. Houses with white fences, children playing in the street, neighbors greeting each other with a smile on their face. The kind of place where people believe they are safe, until they discover that danger sometimes lives inside their own home. This is the story of a woman who believed she had built a perfect life. A story about love, trust, and betrayal. But not just any betrayal. This was one of those moments that changes everything, that tears at your soul, that makes you question whether you ever really knew the person who was by your side. Her name was Clara. She was a simple, strong, sweet woman. She worked as a kindergarten teacher and had always been the kind of person who put others before herself. When she fell in love with Raphael, while still in college, it seemed like something out of a romantic movie. He was outgoing, charismatic, and handsome. He made everyone laugh, but he reserved his most intense looks just for her. Clara believed she had found her home in his arms. They married young, with few resources but many dreams. Together they went through hardships, sleepless nights, tight bills, but they also built memories, a little house full of details that only love can sculpt, and a routine that, in her eyes, was sacred. And it was precisely in this routine that something began to creak. First, there were the delays. Then there were the silences, small details that for anyone else might go unnoticed. But Clara had always been sensitive, intuitive. She could sense when Raphael was no longer fully there. She felt the cold touch, the mechanical kisses, the gazes that no longer lingered on hers. It was then that something started screaming inside her. A sixth sense, a shiver down her spine, a pang in her stomach every time he left for a work meeting, or said he was so tired. But the cruelest thing of all was not the sudden separation. It wasn't the read and unanswered messages, nor the strange smell of perfume on his shirts. It was the name that first appeared innocently, unpretentiously, but that would later become the deepest wound in his life. Camilla. Camilla was her best friend, one of those who came in without knocking, who knew where everything was in the house, who spent Christmas with her family, who Clara chose to be her maid of honor. She was like a sister, and that's why, when everything fell apart, the pain surpassed any imaginable limit. But the way this story ends, oh, no one could have predicted that, because it's not enough to have a broken heart. Sometimes you have to bury it with a bouquet of flowers in your hands and a forced smile on your face, in the face of life's greatest irony. And I invite you now to dive into this story with an open heart, because it will make you doubt, revolt, get emotional, and perhaps even make you rethink who you trust your tears to. What about you? What would you do if you found out that your husband had run off with your best friend? Would you have the strength to watch their wedding from the front row? Or would you do what Clara did? Comment below and tell me what you think. And if you want to follow this story to the end, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. You won't want to miss the next chapters.
Hello, my name is Clara, and if you had met me 2 years ago, you would have described me as the happiest woman in the world. I believe that too. I lived in a fairy tale of my own, you know? A peaceful marriage, a warm home, a friendship that I called sisterhood. But everything has changed, in ways I could never have imagined. Raphael and I met when I was still studying education. He was the kind of guy who walked into a room and automatically became the center of attention. He had a natural, almost hypnotic glow. And me? I was the shy girl in the corner who only drew attention when I had to present a group project. But he saw me, he chose me, and for me, That was like winning the love lottery. We were together for almost 8 years. We built every detail of our home with our own hands. Every piece of furniture, every color choice, every little piece of that place had a little bit of both of us. Raphael was always a great partner in the beginning. He listened to me, welcomed me, made me laugh even in the worst weeks. I swear, I never imagined he would be capable of breaking my heart like that. And as for Camilla, well, she came into my life even before Raphael. We met in high school. We became friends at first joke. We went through everything together. Losses, graduations, parties, breakups. She knew my life like the back of her hand. And what's more, she knew every detail of my marriage, my insecurities, my fights, the good and bad times with Raphael. I trusted her blindly. The first time I noticed something strange was on a Saturday night. Raphael had gone out to meet some friends from work. I thought it was weird because he always avoided going out without me, and Camilla was especially distant that day. We used to meet on Saturday afternoons to catch up, drink coffee, and laugh about stupid things. But that day she said she was unwell. The detail? At the same time, I saw on her stories a dinner with white wine. The caption read, "A special night." At the time, I didn't connect the dots. I just felt that discomfort in the pit of my stomach. A silly discomfort, I thought, but the truth is that my body already knew. After that, the disagreements began. Raphael said he was swamped with work. Camilla would disappear for days, then show up with vague excuses. And I, like an idiot, tried to justify everything. They're busy. It's just a coincidence. Maybe I'm exaggerating, until one day I saw a message on Raphael's phone. He had left his phone unlocked on the table while he was taking a shower. I've never been the type to go through other people's things. I always believed that those who seek, find. But that day, something pulled me. It was stronger than me. The message was not scandalous, nor blatant, but it said it all. It was wonderful yesterday. I can still taste the wine. I want you again. No name, no emojis, but I knew that way of writing. I knew the wine. And I knew. My hands started to shake. My heart started to race in a way that almost made me faint. I went through the previous messages. They were all deleted. Only that one remained. As if she was there just to show me what I already feared. I waited for him to get out of the shower. I didn't say anything. I pretended everything was fine. I cooked, I smiled, we watched a movie together. But inside, I wasn't the same anymore. The distrust had entered me like a knife, and it hurt. It hurt in a silent, corrosive way. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted it to be just a coworker. I wanted my best friend not to be involved. That same night, I went to Camilla's profile. I started looking at everything with a different perspective. Old posts, story times, check-ins, everything matched. His disappearances, his dates, his special moments. It was like putting together a macabre puzzle. And even with all of this, I didn't confront anyone. I was in shock. I couldn't process it. It was like my mind was trying to protect me from the truth. In the following days, I started to distance myself. I started to observe more, talk less. Every lie he told me, I recorded. Every excuse Camilla made, I made a mental note of. And little by little, anger started to replace the pain. It wasn't just the betrayal of the man I loved. It was the betrayal of the woman I trusted most in the world. The two of them together. It was too cruel. But the final straw was yet to come. Something that would turn my world upside down. And no, it wasn't just confirmation of the betrayal. It was something even more perverse, and I'm going to tell you this. But first, answer me this. Have you ever suspected someone and preferred to remain silent? Have you ever swallowed your pain just to maintain an image of happiness? If so, comment below. I want to know that I'm not alone. And if this story is moving you, like this video and share it. There's still a lot I need to tell you. After that night, something inside me died. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize myself anymore. I felt empty, ugly, ridiculous, as if everything I believed in had turned to dust. I still didn't have concrete proof. But deep down, I already knew. I knew that Raphael and Camila were together, that they laughed at me behind my back, that they turned my most intimate moments into dirty secrets shared between them. But the worst part was pretending. Waking up every day, making coffee, listening to his excuses about last-minute meetings, answering Camilla's texts as if we were still best friends. It was like living in a play, and I was the only one who didn't know the script. All the smiles were rehearsed. And there I was, trying not to break down. Until one day, it couldn't be done anymore. It was a random Tuesday. I was coming home from work, exhausted. I had had a terrible day at school. The kids were restless, and my mind was elsewhere. When I got home, I found Raphael getting ready to go out. He was wearing a new shirt and wearing a strong perfume, the same scent I had smelled on his shirts before without knowing where it was coming from. He told me he was going to have dinner with a client, but when he left, something pushed me. I didn't think. I just got in the car and followed him. You know when you feel like it's going to hurt, but you need to see it with your own eyes. That was it. And I followed. I kept my distance, my heart was in my throat, and I went. He went into a restaurant in the South Zone, one of those more hidden, discreet ones. I waited a few minutes, and then I saw it. I saw her arriving, Camila, in a blue dress, hair tied to the side, high heels, laughing, beautiful, happy, and then I knew, no doubt, no room for excuses or misunderstandings. They were together, there, in front of me. I stood in the car for about 5 minutes. I was shaking. I couldn't cry. It was like my body had shut down. When I got home, I went into the bathroom and threw up. I felt disgusted. At them, at myself, at everything. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, Raphael acted as if nothing had happened. He kissed me on the cheek before leaving and asked if I wanted him to stop by the grocery store. It made me sick to my stomach. He was so cynical, so cold. And Camila. That same day, she texted me asking if I wanted to grab coffee over the weekend. As if nothing had happened. I didn't answer. Not to her, but I answered to myself. And then I decided I had to end it somehow. But it wouldn't be with a scene. It wouldn't be with shouting. It would be my way. In the following days, I began to prepare myself. I made copies of important documents, organized my accounts, and looked for a lawyer. I knew Raphael wouldn't tell me anything. He would drag me along as he could. Maybe, deep down, he hoped I would find out on my own and make things easier for him. And I made it easy. But not like he imagined. A short time later, he called me to talk. He was nervous. He said that things between us weren't working out, that maybe it was time to take a break, that he loved me, but not in the same way. That standard conversation of someone who wants to leave without coming off as the villain. I remained silent, just listening. In the end, he said, "I think we should separate with respect and maturity." I just nodded. And then came the final blow. With the most straight face in the world, he said to me, "I wanted to be honest with you. I'm involved with someone else, and I think you deserve to know. It's Camila." Silence. I stared at him as if he were a stranger, as if I had never slept with that man. And all I could say was, "I know." He turned pale. I hadn't expected it. I thought he was giving me some explosive news, that he was going to destroy me. But I had already been destroyed for a long time. And then he asked, somewhat surprised, "You're not going to say anything?" I shook my head. I said softly, "Not now. One day, maybe." In the following days, I began the separation process. He left. Home. He said he was going to stay for a while, at a friend's house. I didn't even question it. I already knew where he was. Camilla never looked for me to tell me. You never apologized, never tried to justify. She just disappeared, as if nothing had happened, as if years of friendship were disposable. And even after all this, life still had one final slap in store for me. 2 months later, I received a message from his mother, Donna Lucia. She had always been a sweet and caring woman. She said she was sorry for what had happened, and she ended with, "I wanted you to know from me, Rafael and Camila are getting married." I was shocked. "But I thought you deserved to know before everyone else. I read that message about 10 times. Get married? So soon? With her?" I locked myself in the bathroom and cried myself to sleep on the cold floor. That's when my pain turned into something else. I no longer wanted revenge or explanations. I just wanted closure. To put an end to it in my own way, and I found a way to do it. But that part, I'll tell you about that later, because a lot of people won't understand what I did. A lot of people will judge me, but it was what I managed to do with the little dignity I had left. What about you? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you have gone to their wedding? Would you have confronted them? Comment below and tell me. And if this story is affecting you, share it with someone who has been through something similar. I still have more to reveal. You know when they say that pain changes us, that there comes a point where you feel nothing anymore, just a silent emptiness? I reached that point after Rafael's mother's message saying that he was going to marry Camila. I broke inside, but not in that outrageous, desperate way. No. It was like something had been ripped out of me so brutally that even the tears dried up. I sat there, on the edge of the bed, looking at my phone, trying to understand how 2 people I loved so much could hurt me like that, so quickly, so raw. They were going to get married, not even 3 months after the separation, without any attempt to disguise it, to wait, to at least have the decency to let myself breathe. What was killing me wasn't just the marriage. It was the fact that Camila was able to do this to me. She knew every part of my soul. She knew how much I loved Rafael. She knew my deepest fears, my insecurities, my stories. She was by my side when I lost my father, when I faced that serious infection, when I almost dropped out of college. She was my soul sister, and now she was the one standing at the altar with the man who destroyed my life. In the early days, I confess, I thought about disappearing, about leaving the city, changing my name, cutting off contact with everyone. I wanted to hide because I felt humiliated, defeated, as if I were the clown in the story. And that was what hurt the most, knowing that while I was crying, they were choosing the flavor of the cake, the honeymoon destination, the perfect photos for Instagram. I avoided everything. I stopped using social media. I stopped talking to anyone. I only talked to my mother and my therapist, who was the one who kept me sane at the time. He told me, "You have the right to feel all of this, but you also have the right to do something about this pain." And that's when the idea came to me. Little by little, like a gentle breeze, until it became a hurricane. I wasn't going to run away. I wasn't going to disappear. I wasn't going to let them erase my existence as if I had never been a part of history. I was going to be there, at the wedding. Yes, you heard that right. When I received the invitation, I almost laughed. The audacity, the coldness, the cruelty, it was a simple, elegant invitation. Their names were in gold, on matte paper. No mention of the past. It was like the beginning of a fairy tale. But I knew that story had begun with a stab in the back. I sat with that invitation in my hands for hours. I remembered when Camila would hug me and say that nothing in the world would separate us. I remembered when Rafael swore at the altar that he would love me until the end. I remembered the first night we slept together, the birthdays, the plans to have children. It all seemed so distant now. as if it had been a life that another woman had lived in my place. That's when I decided. I would send flowers, but they wouldn't be ordinary flowers. They would be a reminder. I went to the most expensive flower shop in town. I asked for an impressive arrangement, full of white lilies, the flowers Camilla said she hated because they reminded her of a funeral. I added red roses because I knew Raphael gave me one of those every birthday. I asked for a card and wrote, as calmly as possible, "May this love blossom with the same truth that destroyed mine. Clara." I paid in advance. I gave the address of the venue, and I asked for timed delivery, 15 minutes before the ceremony started. After that, I hung up the phone and went to take a long shower, as if I was purifying myself. I wasn't going to the wedding. I didn't want to see them or hear false vows. But I wanted them to know I was there. I wanted the ghost of truth to be present, even if silently. On the wedding day, I made tea, sat on my mother's porch, and was at peace. For the first time in months. The pain was still there, of course, but it was a different kind of pain. It was as if I had taken back a piece of my dignity. Hours later, a friend who was among the guests sent me a message, unaware of what I had done. She wrote, "Girl, there was a bit of a tension here. Some flowers arrived with a sinister note. Everyone was talking about it. Camilla went white. Raphael left the room for a few minutes. Do you know anything?" I just replied, "No, but I hope they were beautiful." And they were. I needed that. Not to get revenge, but to end a cycle. I wasn't going to keep quiet. I wasn't going to pretend. It didn't hurt. I wasn't going to let them rewrite history without my version. Since then, many people have called me crazy, unbalanced, and bitter. And that's okay. I understand. But the truth is that anyone who goes through a double betrayal of this magnitude doesn't come out the same. They don't come out unscathed. You can't be the same person after being betrayed by the love of your life and your best friend at the same time. And that's what I did. I delivered flowers at their wedding. Maybe it was too little. Maybe it was too much. But that's what my wounded heart could do. What about you? Would you have done the same? Would you have sent flowers or preferred silence? Comment here. Tell me. I read everything. And if you have ever experienced something like this, share this video with someone who needs to hear this story, because it is not over yet. After that day, I thought everything would get better. That after the flowers, the note, that last twinge of silent irony, I would finally be able to breathe. Live, perhaps. Start over. But it wasn't quite like that. The truth is, even after putting an end to it, the echo of the pain still remains. Betrayal doesn't end when the other person leaves. It continues inside us, in our memories, in our sleepless nights, in our unanswered questions. The first few days after the wedding were strangely calm. I stayed at my mother's house, away from everything, trying to gather my thoughts. I woke up early, went for walks, read books that had been on the shelf for years. I almost managed to fool myself, pretending that life was returning to normal. But all it took was a second of silence, and everything would come back. Sometimes it was a song that would play, and I would remember Raphael singing it wrong in the car. Sometimes it was the smell of a shampoo that would remind me of Camilla sleeping on the couch in my living room, laughing at my jokes. Sometimes it was just waking up and not having my life anymore. The life I had built for almost 7 years. Yes, it was 7 years with Raphael. 7. And with Camilla, more than 12. It's a long time. It's a lot of history. And that's why the wound didn't seem to heal. But I'm stubborn. I always have been. So I started rebuilding. I went to the salon and got a haircut. I changed the cut, the color, the way I styled my hair. It may seem silly, but it's like peeling off the shell of who you no longer want to be. I joined the gym. I went back to therapy with more focus. I started studying French online, something I'd always wanted to do but never prioritized. I found myself, little by little, smiling again, I received invitations to go out, and I accepted some. Nothing serious, just light dinners and relaxed conversations. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to look around and see that there was life beyond the love that had devastated me. But of course their shadow still haunted me. On one of those outings, I went to a new restaurant with a friend. We were laughing, taking pictures of our food, when someone tapped me on the shoulder. It was an acquaintance from college. The conversation was quick, but her last sentence left me breathless. "Did you see that Camilla is pregnant?" My stomach turned. The world seemed to spin in slow motion. And there I was, frozen. I swallowed hard, smiled, pretended I didn't care. But inside, everything fell apart again. Pregnant? Of course. Of course it would be now. Of course the next step would be this. The ending to the fairy tale they built on the rubble of mine. I returned home once again with that lump in my throat. Alone, lying in bed where I no longer slept with anyone. Silence became my greatest enemy once again. I didn't cry, not anymore, but I was angry. Angry at them, angry at myself, angry at the universe for rewarding those who hurt and punishing those who love. But the truth, deep down, is that I knew that pregnancy didn't change anything. It just put a ribbon on the box of lies. And yet, days later, I received a message. It was Raphael's. Yes, his. "Clara, I know you might not want to talk to me, but I wanted you to know from me. Camilla is pregnant. I thought it was only fair that you know before seeing it on social media. I also wanted to apologize to you. For everything. For being a coward. For hurting you. I know I will never deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted to try to ask you anyway." I read and reread that message as if it were a cruel joke. After all, did he want peace, forgiveness, emotional justice? It took me 2 days to respond. And when I did, I was direct. I already knew. And no, Raphael, you do not have my forgiveness. Because what you and Camilla did was not just a mistake. It was an ongoing choice. You erased me from your lives as if I were disposable. But I am not. And today, even with pain, I move forward. I hope that one day you understand what you lost. I sent it, and I blocked it. It was liberating. Little by little, my life began to take on new colors. I was accepted into a specialization course. I started writing short texts about self-love and overcoming obstacles. Some people started following me because of that. I saw a new Clara being born, more confident, more aware, more in control of herself. And as contradictory as it may seem, I felt alive. For the first time in a long time, my story no longer revolved around them. It was about me. But don't think that everything was linear. I had relapses. There were nights when I went to Camilla's profile, saw her belly growing, and asked myself, what if it were me? But then I closed the app, took a deep breath, and remembered. It wasn't. And maybe it was for the best. Because today, when I look back, I see that being with someone who is capable of betraying you is not luck, it is condemnation. And that losing, people who are capable of destroying you, is, yes, a deliverance. A painful one, but a necessary one. And that's not the end of my story. There's more. Because not everything ended with the wedding, nor with the flowers, nor with the pregnancy. There was still something that no one expected. But I'll tell you about that later. If you've made it this far, comment. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself after a deep pain? What was it like? And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe someone who, like me, is trying to rise from the ashes. I thought I had closed the cycle. I really thought that after everything, the wedding, the flowers, the pregnancy, Raphael's message, nothing could shake me anymore. I had already felt all the pain a woman could feel. I had already broken down and started to rebuild myself. Life was taking another direction. I was managing to smile without pretending. Look in the mirror and don't just see a victim. And it was just when I began to find some peace again that it reappeared. Camilla. Yes. She out of nowhere. Without warning. One morning, I opened my email, an old one that I hardly used anymore, and there was a message from her. Subject: please, listen to me. I swear. I stared at it for a good few minutes, not knowing if it clicked or not. My heart raced. My hands sweated. I felt like a teenager who had just been caught doing something wrong. But it wasn't guilt. It was fear. Fear of reopening a wound that I had fought so hard to heal. But I opened it. Eli. Clara, I know you might not even want to finish reading this, but I had to try. Even if you never forgive me, which I would completely understand, I need to tell you some truths. And no, it's not to justify what I did. There is no justification. I was weak, selfish, and cruel. I destroyed the only true friendship I had in my life, and I'm paying for it. She said that her marriage was falling apart, that Raphael wasn't who she imagined, that, since their honeymoon, he had been cold and distant, that they fought constantly, that he had even left the house once and only returned 2 days later, drunk, and that, now, 7 months pregnant, she felt completely alone, abandoned, lost. I thought I was living a fairy tale, Clara, but what I have is a silent nightmare. I thought I was winning the man of my life, but I lost the only person who truly loved me, you. I miss you every day. I know it's too late, that nothing I say will change what happened, but I needed to tell you. I regret it, with all my heart. And I still dream, even if silently, of the day when you can look at me without hate. I closed the email. I got up. I walked around the house like a zombie. My breath was shallow, my chest tight. Did she miss me, now, after all? She wanted empathy. When she destroyed me, emptied me, tore me out of her life like someone changing clothes, I thought about deleting the message, ignoring it, pretending it never arrived, but a part of me hurt. Because, despite everything, it was Camilla. And maybe that's why it hurt more. In the following days, I kept reliving our memories. Not the ones from the end, but the ones from the beginning. The good ones, the real ones, the ones that came before the betrayal. The late nights laughing at stupid things, the secrets in the college bathroom, the last-minute trips, the way she hugged me when something went wrong. I missed her, yes, the friend she was. And that was the problem. I missed nothing about what happened. It was about what we once were, so I wrote. It took me hours. I rewrote it 10 times, and I sent it. Camilla, I read your email, and to be honest, it affected me more than I would have liked. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because it hurts to see you now reaping what you sowed and remembering that all of this could have been avoided. We had something beautiful, a true friendship, but you destroyed that. You made a choice, an ongoing choice. I don't wish you any harm, or your sons. But I'm also not going to pretend that nothing happened. I'm trying to move on, and I hope you find a way to do the same, even if you go your separate ways. She replied the next day. She thanked me for reading. She said she understood my answer, and she promised never to contact me again. But she lied. 2 weeks later, I receive an unexpected call, an unknown number. I answer, and on the other end, a weak, tearful voice. Clara, it's urgent. Please. It was Camilla. Raphael had left. Home again. This time they had a huge fight. He said horrible things. She felt sick and went to the hospital with very high blood pressure. She was at risk of premature birth. And surprisingly, she had no one. Nobody. She called me, the woman she cheated on, the friend she stabbed, and he asked me for help. I could have hung up. I could have said, get over it. But something inside me, a part that still held compassion, humanity, maybe naivety, hesitated. And I went. Yes, I went. I went to the hospital. I found her lying down, exhausted, with swollen eyes. When she saw me, she broke down. She cried like a child. She asked me for forgiveness, again. She said she loved me, that she felt. She would never be completely happy without my friendship, that Raphael had become a stranger, that she didn't know what to do. I heard her. I held her hand. And for a second, I wanted to hug her. But I held myself back. I stayed there for a few hours. When the tests stabilized, she fell asleep, and I left, without saying anything else. On the way home, I cried. I cried everything that was still trapped inside, for the pain, for the longing, for the anger, for still caring about the person who destroyed me, and for knowing that, despite everything, there was still a part of me that wanted to see Camilla well. Maybe because, deep down, forgiving is a gesture that we do more for ourselves than for the other person. But don't think this story ends here, because a few months later, something happened, something that changed everything, again. But that, I'll tell you in the next part. And now I want to know, would you have gone to the hospital? Would you have helped? Or would you have left her alone? Comment below and tell me, because your opinion is part of this story. And if this touched, you like, share, subscribe, because what comes next, you won't believe. After that night in the hospital, I thought that everything would finally find its place. I thought I had done my part, that I could go back to my life and leave the past where it belonged, buried. Camilla continued her pregnancy on bed rest. Raphael, according to her, came home a few days later, a little embarrassed, trying to make peace. They stayed together, at least apparently. And me? I kept trying to breathe. But it's strange how the universe seems to like testing us. It was a typical Tuesday. I had just finished work and stopped for a coffee. I was sitting there reading a message on my phone when a woman approached my table. Brown eyes, steady gaze, about 30-something. "Clara? Are you Clara?" I confirmed, surprised. "Sorry to intrude. My name is Vanessa. I was Raphael's colleague. We worked together for almost 2 years, and I need to tell you something. I don't know if you'll listen to me, but I had to try." My stomach turned. That phrase, "I need to tell you something," had already destroyed my life once. I swallowed hard and asked her to sit down. She said that she worked with Raphael during a period when we were still together. She said that, for a long time, she suspected that he had something with someone at work, but later found out that it wasn't from there. And then, she thought I already knew everything, until, a few days ago, she saw a post of mine about starting over and realized that maybe I still didn't know everything. It was then that she said, "Clara, Raphael didn't start with Camilla at the end of the marriage. He was already cheating on you long before, and it wasn't just with her." My heart stopped. She said that, on a work trip, he had gotten involved with another woman, that he often made derogatory comments about me at the office, saying that I was controlling, jealous, cold, that I needed adventure, that his marriage was a prison. And that, even before Camilla came into the picture, he was already flirting, sending messages, and sneaking out. Vanessa said she couldn't bear the weight of keeping it to herself any longer. That, after seeing everything I'd been through, she was ashamed of having kept quiet. I thanked him, trembling. I could barely breathe. I returned home as if I were carrying 100 kilos on my back. I felt sick. I couldn't eat, sleep, or think, so everything I had believed was a lie? Camilla wasn't the betrayal. She was just the one who stayed, the one that worked, or failed, I don't know. But before her, how many nights did he come? Home saying he was tired while he was coming back from someone else's bed? How many times did he kiss me with someone else's mouth? I cried. I screamed. I tore up an old photo. And then, in silence, I looked at my own naivety, as if I were looking at a stranger. I was deceived in every way. And for some reason I can't even explain, I told Camilla. I sent a message. I was direct. Camilla, they told me that you weren't. The first, that Raphael was already cheating on me before you. I thought you should know. She called me, crying, saying she didn't know, that she had asked him, and he denied everything. But that, in the last few months, she felt something was wrong, that he'd disappeared, got angry over the slightest thing, that she was no longer sure of anything. Then she told me something I never expected to hear. Clara, I think he's cheating on me now. With someone else, my world spun. Not out of pity, but ironically, the cycle repeated itself, and she was the new me, the new woman being betrayed, devalued, ignored, and life, with its silent cruelty, closed a cycle. Camilla said she felt trapped, but afraid to leave. Pregnant, vulnerable, emotionally destroyed. I listened to it all without knowing what to say, because, as much as my instinct wanted to scream, "Now do you understand?" a part of me only felt a strange emptiness. She asked for my help. Again, she said she had no one else, that she needed support, that she felt her baby was coming early and she didn't want to be alone. I thought. A lot, and I accepted. Not for her, but for the baby, for me. To close this cycle once and for all. I went with her to an appointment. I stood in the waiting room while she underwent tests. I saw her name being called, and I saw the emptiness in her eyes. A woman who had once been my soul sister, now seemed like a shadow of what we once were. That night, I found myself thinking about everything, about Raphael, how cowardly, manipulative, and lying he was, how he destroyed 2 women with the same poison, feeling superior. And it was there, for the first time, that I found myself free of him. Yes, I realized I felt nothing anymore. No pain, no love, no doubt, just relief. But the story is not over yet. The last chapter was missing, the birth of the baby. And what happened in that hospital, no one could have predicted. But I'll tell you about that in the final part. And now, tell me, do you believe that people like Raphael deserve a second chance? Or do you think that certain mistakes simply cannot be undone? Tell me in the comments. Like this story, if it touches you, and share it with someone who needs to open their eyes. We've reached the end, but it wasn't how I imagined. Camilla was 35 weeks pregnant when it all happened. It was early morning, a cold Sunday, one of those times when the silence of the city seems heavier. I was sleeping when my cell phone rang. I answered it in surprise. Clara. Help me. I'm in a lot of pain, I think. I think it's coming. It was her. The water had broken. Raphael wasn't home. Again. Camilla didn't know what to do. She was scared, crying, alone. I didn't think twice. I got up, grabbed my bag, threw a coat over my pajamas, and went. When I arrived at her building, the doorman already knew me, from so many comings and goings. She staggered down, panting, with her hand on her belly. I held her. I got into the car with her. I sped to the hospital. I had never driven so fast, or so scared. Along the way, she held me tightly. Clara, if anything happens, promise me you won't leave him with Raphael. Promise. That sentence cut me open. Don't say that. Everything will be fine. But she insisted. He begged me. He said he didn't trust him anymore, that she had finally discovered that he was actually cheating on her. With another coworker, that he was already sleeping outside without explaining, that barely touched the belly, which said that this had been a mistake. Yes. That. The baby. We arrived at the hospital. They took her straight to the emergency room. I stayed in the waiting room, pacing back and forth, biting my nails with my head boiling. After an hour, a nurse came. She is fine. But an emergency cesarean section was necessary. The baby was born with breathing difficulties. She is in the neonatal ICU. My body went limp. She left my name on the form. Then they let me see her for a few minutes. Camilla was pale, weak, with dry tears on her face. When she saw me, she tried to smile. He was born. His name is Gabriel. And with a choked voice, he said to me, "Thank you for being here. You're the only person who was truly there from start to finish. I'll never be able to repay that." I held your hand, and there, in that white room, smelling of alcohol and tears, I forgave. Not with words, with the silence of the heart, with the choice to be there, with the decision to no longer carry that weight. Stayed with her until the ICU team arrived. Then I went to see the baby. A little person with tubes, machines, noises that seemed to come from another planet. And yet, so innocent, so pure, so far from the mess that adults cause. I watched him, and I thought about everything. About the woman I was, about the woman Camilla was, about the man who hurt us, and about the chance that baby had of growing up without repeating any of that pain. When I left the room, I came face to face with Raphael. He came in with that arrogant air. He asked if everything was okay, if the baby had been born yet. I said yes. He ignored me and went into the room. He didn't even say thank you. At that moment, I knew what I had to do. I spent the next few days helping Camilla at the hospital. She was still very weak. The baby was still in the ICU, but stable. Raphael only showed up once or twice, always quickly, always in a hurry. The 5th day, Camilla called me to talk. "Clara, I made a decision. I'm leaving. Me and Gabriel." She said she had an aunt in the interior of Minas Gerais, that the woman had always welcomed her like a mother, that she couldn't stand living in that city anymore with those ghosts, that she wanted to raise her son far away from Raphael, that, if she could, she would disappear from the map. "I don't want to fight for alimony. I don't want to fight. I want peace, that's all." And then, she made me a request. "Would you come with me?" I choked. "Like this? You're starting your life over. Me too. We've been everything to each other. And look, deep down, we still are. Not in the same way, but I don't want to go through this alone. You taught me what real support is. You're more of a mother to Gabriel than his father will ever be." I was speechless. I thought about everything this meant. Leaving my city, my job, my plans, starting over from scratch. But you know what I realized? I had already started over once, and I didn't die, and maybe that was the chance to do everything differently, to write a new story, a story without betrayal, without lies, without Raphael. The following week, we rented a simple little house with a porch in the countryside. The baby was discharged. We got a car, and we left. Today, Gabriel is 6 months old. Camilla works from home, and so do you. We are 2 rebuilt women. Wounded, yes, but standing tall, strong. Our bond is no longer one of blind brotherhood. It is one of complicity. For real. And Raphael? He never looked for his son, never asked anything. He disappeared, as he always did. But the truth is, it's not necessary. The wound turned into a scar, and I learned the hardest lesson of all. Not everyone who comes into your life deserves to stay. Sometimes betrayal comes from where you least expect it. But love, so does love. What Camilla and I are building now does not erase the past, but it shows that the future can be different. And that, for me, is everything. Now tell me, would you forgive such a betrayal? Would you trust someone who destroyed your life again? Or do you think I was weak? Comment here. Tell me. Judge if you want. But above all, reflect. And if this story touched you in any way, like, share, and subscribe. Because maybe someone on the other side also needs to find the strength to start over. And believe me, it works. It always works.